Our esteemed guests, it's our pleasure now to welcome you to the third session, titled From Readiness to Resilience, Governing Frontier Technologies Through National Action and Global Collaboration. This session will highlight how the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is piloting the World Economic Forum's Quantum Economy Blueprint to build national readiness for quantum technologies. And now I am pleased to invite the session's moderator, Mr. Hussein Abu Al-Ainain, Director and Head of Middle East at Access Partnership, to take on and lead the intensive session from here on. Please
Thank you very much.
A warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Riyadh for those of you visiting the first time, and it's very good to also see a lot of common faces in the audience today. Welcome to our session, which is titled From Readiness to Resilience, Governing Frontier Technologies Through National Action and Global Collaboration. In today's world, we see a lot of rapid advances in emerging technologies. We see issues relating to quantum computing, AI, cloud, and others as well take the front stage when we talk about policy, when we talk about regulations, and we talk about also technology enablement more broadly and ecosystem development. In an era defined by these rapid advances, our session will try and examine how stakeholders can collaborate and partner, whether at the national level or at the global stage, to go from a state of readiness to a state of resilience. And today, some of the key themes that we will discuss go from digital inclusion, ecosystem development, digital cooperation, but more importantly, also sustainability by design, where from the very beginning, both policymakers and regulatory authorities can make sure that any elements related to readiness or resilience are sustainable. I'm also very pleased to be joined by a stellar panel today. Allow me to introduce my first speaker, Dr. Saad Al-Uwaid, who is the General Manager of Quantum Technology and Advanced Computing Institute at King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology. He also leads a quantum economy project at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Saudi Arabia, C4RSA, in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. Of course, Dr. Al-Uwaid holds a PhD in computing from the University of Amsterdam and an MBA from Boston University with more than 15 years of experience in deep tech, including high-performance computing and quantum. I'm also very pleased to be joined by Mr. Hani Al-Hamsi, who is an electrical engineer with a degree from the King Fahd University of Petroleum and Minerals, holding also a master's in engineering and entrepreneurship and innovation from McMaster University in Canada. For many years, he has led transformative projects in research, development, and innovation within the Saudi Ministry of Communications and Information Technology, and he currently serves as the Director of Technology Development, where he oversees national deep tech and emerging technology directions and frameworks. May I please ask both my stellar speakers to join me on the stage. Right, gentlemen, it's really exciting to have you with me. I think our session comes at a time where everyone's talking about frontier technologies. Everyone's talking about things like quantum and AI and elsewhere. I think I want to try and get straight into the topic and also looking at the title of our session. And I want to look at you, Mr. Hani, and I want to ask, when we look at frontier technologies more broadly, what is your views on how governments and policymakers can and should go from readiness to resilience? How do we do that?
Well, I'm glad, first of all, thank you for hosting this and thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here. Your question is spot on. maybe if we take a step back, technologies are basically things that humans made, people made to serve human needs. And these needs are basically usually made for the benefit of the rest, right? But sometimes it comes at a cost, sometimes there are harms, sometimes there are things that we need to control. So this is why we need to regulate these things. And the rapid pace of technology is something that we need to consider a little bit in detail. But these things require a new way of thinking. These things require different tool sets than we're used to. I think Natalie talked about this in our prior talk regarding foresight and all these things. So perhaps I'd leave this maybe for another question, but I think the addressing the rapid pace of innovation and acceleration and advancements of these technologies is posing a different kind of paradigm that we need to think outside the box. There's obviously a lag between the ability to regulate something, to set up these systems that in some sense control for or limit the harm that certain things can do, or create incentives that can accelerate certain things. So there's this lag that we're noticing, and this lag is growing even larger. We try to bridge this gap by being more proactive. The proactivity unfortunately in the regulatory space, as you can imagine, is ridden with bureaucracy, and it's quite difficult to act beforehand. And we need to think outside that normal regime and think in terms of utilizing this kind of foresighted approach, understanding the complexity that things are actually filled in or exist within that. So there's a few things that I'd like to highlight in some kind of a background before suggesting how we actually try to address this. So there's acknowledging the complexity of the system that we exist in by thinking or adopting a systems thinking approach, where there are different pieces that are all interconnected and they affect one another. And this is not a simple system. There's inputs, there's outputs, there's feedback loops and all sorts of things. So you need to think in that scope, and then you'll have a different view on how these different challenges affect society in general. There's also futures thinking, where, like they discussed in the panel before us, it's about having a handle on uncertainty, having a handle on things that could go in multiple possibilities in different rates, and figuring out how you can channel that to the best of your ability today. There's also design-centered thinking or design thinking. Design thinking allows you or lets you sit and think about solving problems from a human-centered perspective. This human centricity is quite important to ground regulatory systems into thinking about what the effects and consequences of their actions and their decisions in terms of choosing the interventions and the toolkit, which tools we're using for the benefit of people, right? So when you put all that together and you start to think in systems, you're human-centric and you're foresighted, you start to realize that it's not just one player that is holding the stage. And we think of this as ecosystems thinking. So this is where you try to action a different way of implementing changes by taking into account a variety of different actors in all different layers and engaging with them in ways that are outside the box, that do not fall in the usual bureaucratic system, but you still have to work around that. So even with this ecosystems mindset, you still have to go, at the end of the day, back to your usual role and in your domain, in your jurisdiction, with your boundaries and your systems and your rules and all of those things. And you have to use that somehow to make change. So, I mean, in summary, frontier technologies are really different. They're at the cutting edge. We haven't had enough experience with them to understand fully what their problems could create. So we need to be very careful, but we also need to work within the environment of the systems that we currently have. So we sit together, we have these meetings, we have these discussions, we bring up and brainstorm all sorts of possible things. We fundamentally agree on the principles and the logic of whatever new frontier technology is bringing about. And then we go each to our own system and we try to make a nudge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more, because when I think about frontier technologies more broadly, and even some of the sub-technologies, sometimes I think that what's required is not just simply to think outside of the box, but I reckon sometimes we just have to take the entire box away and then start thinking. It's not necessarily a new approach. It's been implemented in many different sectors, in the technology sector as well. We've had massive developments over the course of the many decades that have passed that show us how we can apply a new way of thinking to issues relating to regulations, to understanding the risks, to highlighting the benefits as well, which is really important. I also take quite a lot of interest in your comments specifically on ecosystem thinking, where in my view of things, and as you've mentioned to our audience, it's no longer just about one individual player or a single stakeholder trying to chart the entire landscape for what the development of a certain frontier technology looks like, but rather it's a collaborative approach that brings together stakeholders from different, not just sectors, but different also layers of the value chain when it comes to that specific frontier technology. Now, I really want to move to Dr. Saad, because when it comes to ecosystem thinking, both, of course, the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Saudi Arabia, as well as, of course, the World Economic Forum, have championed ecosystem thinking for many years, not just through the annual meetings and the different events that you host, but also through the publications that we've seen come out over the past many months and so on. What are your thoughts specifically on ecosystem thinking? And if we're trying to also help our audience localize a little bit more, improve their understanding of that specific way of thinking, can you also share a little bit more with us on the quantum economy blueprint that I believe the forum is after, and of course you've been trying to implement as a local case study with the center? So I'm going to stop now and I'm going to turn to you. We're really excited for your input.
Thank you very much, Hussein, for this nice introduction, also for telling the history of the C4IR and the WIF collaboration. Also, I would like to thank CST and the ITU for this great event, and it's really my pleasure to be as one of the participants here. Just to give a context here. So the quantum economy project is a flagship project in the Center for Fourth Industrial Revolution, Saudi Arabia, C4IR SA. And in this project, we are considering piloting the quantum economy blueprint. This blueprint is proposed by the World Economic Forum, and it's a conceptualization of over 100 quantum technology strategies over the world. So the aim of this the aim of this blueprint is to really first look at the gaps in the technology itself, and then really moving the countries towards implementing their own strategies. The big aim of this blueprint is to really reduce the quantum gap, the quantum divide between countries. So there will be in the future countries that they do have quantum technologies, quantum talent, they do have all the tools in there, and the other countries who are following or even they don't have these technologies. Now I want to really zoom into the blueprint itself. The blueprint is consisting of 9 different themes for the quantum realm as the whole holistic view. I will not really go into the whole details, but I will link it with the title of this session. So we do have the readiness part, which is the first theme, the transformative capability. And in this, we do first see where the country is, which is where Saudi Arabia in that race by doing the SWOT analysis. We look at the strength, weakness, opportunities, and the threats. And then what is the second one is the value analysis, where the value can be coming from this technology. And by knowing these two main elements, we can give a good recommendation on where to invest, on which realm in the quantum technology. Now, for the second pillar is the resilience, which is from readiness to resilience, is containing most of the themes in the blueprint, starting from the supply chain, getting the access to the supply chain either in-house or over the cloud. Also, the workforce development. One important theme is the open innovation and commercialization, which is the lab to market to guarantee the resilience to move from lab where the research is and then to the market points. Also, it contains the cybersecurity approach, etc. The last pillar is the inclusivity, where the stakeholders will be joining this effort, and that can be done with by creating the awareness. So the awareness part is not only for general public but also for decision makers. And in that sense, also how to deliver the information, how to avoid the hype is one of the big things. So this being said, as the quantum economy blueprint, now what is the piloting part of this? Yeah. And I know that you're going to ask about it, so
Of course I must, because I also think like our audience are very interested in how do you take what appears to be a blueprint at a global stage that is applicable to many different countries and hear a bit more about what does it look like for Saudi Arabia? How do I implement this? But also, if there are regulatory authorities or different regulators and different policymakers sat with us, they'd also be interested in understanding how do I go along to pilot something similar. So please, on piloting, yes.
Yes. So for each theme, we look at the current status in Saudi Arabia, who are the main players in that new technology. I'm not talking about too much about quantum, but it's more about emerging technology. Who are the main players in that theme? So who in the workforce development, who are in the supply chain, and so on for the whole themes. Then what are the second ingredient is what are the global best practices in there. How are the countries are approaching this, and are there any numbers that it shows this information is true or not, or is the claim is it real or not? After taking these two together with the Saudi context, the surveys, interviews with the experts, we come up with a number of recommendations, solid recommendations, interconnected between each other to come up with one vision towards this technology. And for sure, this policy are true maybe today, in 2-3 weeks, not 2-3 weeks, but several months, it will be more like absolute, and then you have to work towards other.
Absolutely. I think that's very interesting. I think it's very interesting when we start looking at not just how the blueprint looks at the different elements that you should consider as you develop some sort of an approach to quantum, but I quite also enjoy what you've said about when we are looking at the development and implementation of any emerging technology, any frontier technology, there must be some sort of a vision for how am I going to enable both the development and then move towards implementation, because again, it's an ecosystem. It does not exist in a vacuum. And that's why I believe the blueprint as well as the implementation plan looks at things like How am I going to, think about workforce development? Do I have enough capacity and skills within the market to start developing such a technology or not? If I do, then how do I actually make sure that it continues to be attractive on the long term? And so on. And I quite also enjoy how when we're looking at a country's journey from readiness to resilience, it's always good that we start by trying to understand where we are at the moment. And again, what capacity do we need to build over the next X couple of years to get us to a point where we're not just ready, but we're actually resilient? So I want to turn back to Mr. Hani, because I think that's a point where you probably can add a lot to. When we talk about building resilience specifically, we also talk a lot of demand for institutional capacity, which in some cases exists, but in many others, not necessarily. Can you tell me a little bit more about how the MCIT more broadly is approaching regulatory capacity building, whether in relation to quantum or frontier technologies more broadly, and if there are any other examples from initiatives that you've recently launched or whatnot that you can also share with our audience?
Yeah. Well, that's a very exciting question. I mean,
I'm
got me
glad you find it exciting. Like I can see you're getting rattled already. Good.
So this is a phenomenal question. Capacity building, capability building. It's maybe even if I go back to the idea of making your nation or your country or even your company resilient, it's not a single point in time. You don't just wake up one day after having done some amount of activities and expect that you're resilient now. No, it's a continuous process, much like transformation. and this kind of really, if you do, I mean, I'll go back to what Samantha and Natalie were talking about earlier. If you do the old way of thinking, of analyzing, studying, getting workshops, talking to people, getting their feedback, analyzing that, and then coming up with plans, you're never going to get anywhere, not with this stuff, not with this day and age, with this fast pace of the technology, right? So it's important to first of all acknowledge that there are things that already exist and that you are not alone. And MCIT does this. People might argue, is it good, strong, weak at it, but it really does this. We know we're not alone. We know we're not able to do, not one ministry or entity can handle this kind of scope of work alone. So what we do is we partner with international players. We have an ecosystem, and we think in ecosystem now. It's more and more becoming our culture. We think we interact with all the regulatory bodies within Saudi. So CST is our little brother, or let's call them our little brother. We work with CST very intensely. We work with NCA. We work with you name it. I can list. I have a map in my head because I sort of wake up and sleep to this. So there's an ecosystem map that we engage with, and we try to, let's say, complement one another and try to work fast. Right? You can't be proactive and be really slow. There are a lot of challenges with this. So I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me questions about this. So
go for it, right? Like absolutely knock it out of the park. Right?
Yeah. No. So we look at MCIT not as its own thing. We have what we call MCIT Plus.
Yes.
This includes CAXT, by the way, and the C4IR, amongst other entities. We also look outside of the tech ecosystem into what we call MCIT++. This is baked in how we think and how we talk. Some people might say that because of this, it might appear that we are scattered and we come in at some problem from multiple angles, and it can cause confusion. But you have to accept that. Again, comfort with the uncomfortable kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's exactly the name of it. And I think it's important to point at quantum specifically. It embodies the spirit of our time, right? So we're talking about things that are always changing and changing fast, and then hence this uncertainty. Quantum is all about harnessing that, quantum technologies are about harnessing the quantum phenomena, which are essentially dispersions of pathways and likelihoods, and it's essentially uncertainty packaged, right? So if we're able to engineer our quantum technologies, we should be able to regulate or engineer our regulatory systems in some kind of a similar fashion. So this is the acceptance of this kind of confusion or this kind of uncertainty is part and parcel of our time. And we need to engage in that mode, despite the resistance that we might get. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a assured and tried method. It's not. We can't claim that this is working, but we're trying different approaches. We're trying to think of technologies, not in the sense of technology, but in the sense of ecosystem as well. We talk a lot about all these frontier technologies. Let's look back at social media, right? Social media very quickly became a political infrastructure before we were able to regulate it, right? So imagine if we were much more agile. We were starting these concepts, these ideas, and letting them vie out and challenge each other, and then came up with very active and quick to respond initiatives from regulators to control the misinformation and all the damages that these kinds of technologies can do. Other examples of technologies that are lagging are, for example, you've got digital IDs and that kind of and e-signatures and all of that stuff. There's all sorts of things that we could have done much faster. I'm not talking about Saudi. I'm talking about the globe in general. There's all these policies that came in a little late. But I'd like to maybe pause on this particularly, because AI or cloud and all these things are the pinnacle of where we are today. And AI particularly is not an easy topic. Even up to today, I don't think governments, nations, sovereign states have agreed on what it is and what the potential harms can be. And there's no way we could catch up. Every month there's a new thing coming, and it's changing how we perceive it and how we interact with it and how we use it, right? So a strategy and the major lever of government intervention is through strategies generally, or policies. Policies are perhaps softer or more early on, but the strategy we put for AI as Saudi last year no longer applies today. You know, you could imagine what our leadership is doing constantly to try to refresh this, but you can't do it the old way.
And Hani, I want you to hold on that point, because I think we're going to get back to it in a second about the importance of strategy and resilience and also sustainable policy making more broadly, right? But I'm quite enjoying having you both on the panel, because I'm hearing a lot of these themes that I'm quite excited about, right? I think you spoke specifically when we've referenced ecosystem approaches and how do you stay abreast if you're not at least trying to beat the developments in technology more broadly. I think you spoke about the MCIT Plus and the MCIT Plus model. And I can also think of the National Regulatory Committee or the National Regulations Committee in Saudi Arabia. I can also think of initiatives like the Digital Regulatory Academy, all trying to bring together these stakeholders in a way that helps us, again, not just think outside of the box, but take the complete box away and then start thinking. And I think you've referenced this quite well in saying that oftentimes policymakers and regulatory authorities should not assume that they're starting from the point of scratch when there's nothing out there. Oftentimes, indeed, you can make reference or you can make benefit from best practices from elsewhere, whether equally developed nations or developing nations, or perhaps specifically when it comes to the implementation or the development of policy and regulatory approaches in subsectors. You've also mentioned digital ID. Perhaps there's a little lag there, but when we look at digital ID, I think of DPI as an emergent technology. Many people will not say that digital public infrastructure is emergent technology, but I would argue that look at the case of India or look at the case of Brazil and how DPI is being integrated in a day-to-day life that allows people not just to access basic services, but there's a layer of emergent technologies built on top.
Yeah.
So I want you to hold to the point on strategy specifically, and I want to go back to Dr. Saad as well. Dr. Saad, because I'm quite fascinating with the work of the center, of course, and the forum more broadly. But if you can let us know specifically your thoughts on, how did you bring stakeholders together for the development of course, the blueprint, but also for the implementation bit. And if you can specifically also comment on some of the points that Hani mentioned in relation to moving from readiness to resilience, but also perhaps is the quantum blueprint going to be super relevant next year? Is it going to be in 2 years' time? How do you think we can we can continue to bring stakeholders together. How have you? How can we continue to do that? And how can we stay abreast of everything that's going to happen in quantum?
That's a great question, Hussein, and we learned this in the hardest way, if I may say. So, and I see Hani is laughing. So let me just give some
Please.
brief description of that. So in the core, that it's a new technology. So we need first to remove the mystery from this technology and deliver it in a context that the people do understand. This is the first piece. The second piece, that we do have an external enablers that we don't have control of. So the first one, we do have control of them, which is more of the communication part of the message, our message that we deliver. Usually the people who don't understand the technology, they will not participate with you. Not because they don't like you, not because they don't like the technology, but because they don't understand it simply. What you are going to do first, remove any jargons. Second, make a metaphors. For example, if you have, for example, the superconducting, you can just explain the toss of coin. Then it comes to way of your delivering this message, and not answering what, but so what. And in that sense, you link it with what they are, the people they know the most, their work, their daily lives. Then it's also important to mention the outcomes. So how this technology is affecting the pharmaceutical, the medical sectors, the logistics, etc., etc. So you get them buy in the story itself. And for sure, you will guarantee later on the complete collaboration in this. After that, keep continuing the momentum, the quantum momentum. And in that sense, you do the two ways collaboration, either the cooperation with the stakeholders, either in workshops, in seminars, webinars. Keep them engaged, and also get the feedback from them. I mean, sometimes the questions that from people who have fresh eyes on the topic are always the best, because it gives you a totally different angle in there. So as that really being said now, on building that, say, internal communication, now there are the external enablers. And the greatest enabler really that we noticed is the Vision 2030, and aligning the vision of all the people towards one thing. When we talked with the stakeholders about quantum technology, we do have shared common. It's not because they don't understand quantum and others understand. No, we have shared common communities in security, in economy, and we can look at this technology from these angles.
Absolutely. And it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're also taking a very similar approach to what Hani was mentioned in terms of looking at it from a broader perspective, an eagle's eye vision almost, and then trying to go into vertical by vertical, understanding what are some of the implications, what are some of the risks as well and challenges. In your journey so far in terms of implementing the quantum economy blueprint, what are some of these challenges that you faced? And what are you doing? Because in my mind, what are you doing about it? Because in my mind, one of the ways that we move from readiness to resilience is somehow by addressing some of these challenges that start popping up when we're implementing a certain initiative or a blueprint. I think of things like, to your point, that do people really understand what are we talking about? Is there any sub-streams or sub-themes that we need to improve our own regulatory and policy understanding of, etc.? What do you think are some of the challenges?
So it's in the previous answer I said the alignment is important, but also it can be, if it's not being done in the right way, it can be a hurdle. It can be something that it's really it's like a stone in your way that you have to either get it away or put it in your pocket. So having some sort of a national strategy, or at least some sort of a big umbrella that makes the mutual understanding even better. It didn't have to be agreed from the top levels, but at least on the levels that you can communicate with somebody else, having the same mission, vision, and all the priorities in
Absolutely,
there.
yeah. Tanya, I see you like thinking there, and I've got the little thinking hat as well. Like, we've spoken about strategy, very briefly, etc. And one of the questions that I am particularly very interested in is, how do we make strategy sustainable by design? Or how do we, again, have policy and regulatory approaches that are sustainable by design? I don't think a strategy document or a vision document is one that is meant to always be steady, right? Perhaps the vision at a broader level sets the direction on the long term, but then you've got sub-strategies underneath, right? In your work, and you work quite a bit on innovation and whatnot, like, how do you make strategy sustainable by design?
That's a loaded question.
It is. I confess, it is a loaded question.
Yes.
But
let me try to tackle this. I can't again say that there's no one size fits all answer to these kinds of things, right? But in my opinion, and I think this is a common theme I've been noticing, when we talk about strategies, a lot of people go to this set of slides, maybe 500 slides, that have that strategy house with the vision, mission, pillars, and then a lot of these objectives, and then it trails into charters and timelines and KPIs, right? But the strategy is a lot less than that in some sense, materially speaking, but a lot more than that in terms of the effect that it has. A real strategy is not the document. A real strategy is the common language and values that are exchanged between all the members within what this strategy reaches, right? So for us in the MCIT plus, we don't talk about the strategy for AI. We don't talk about the strategy for quantum. We talk about the national strategy for digital economy and space and innovation. We look at it in a larger sense. We talk about wanting to move Saudi from being a consumer to being a creator, to being a producer, to being something that creates value rather than just consumes value. So these are the things that we start to talk about. And then naturally you see, and this is from the direction of His Royal Highness and what the Vision 2030 had set forth, what it really did. There's a lot of nuance to this, and I'm pretty sure some might disagree with me about some things like that. Obviously, the funding and the schemes, the official pathways where projects get initiated and established is critical. But the more substantial part of all of this is that message that we all communicate with each other, and then everybody tries to realize it in their own way. Remember the ecosystems thing that we were talking about? It's when we convene. You're from a different entity, you're from a different organization, you're probably from an international entity like ITU talking to us. We're sitting together. We agree on the concepts, really. And then each of us goes to their entity and their environment and tries to see, well, what can I do within these rules that moves towards that? And that's essentially what it is. So strategy setting is not, maybe if we acknowledge this more readily and start to simplify the strategy documents, make them more live. So currently we have this static view of them. What if it's a website, right? What if it's an AI model? What if it's a combination of things with contacts and links to people that becomes in itself a living, breathing digital entity, right? And this, so we need to think outside the box, but we have to live in the box, right? We operate in this box. These are the things that we can do. I cannot fly yet, but I would like to go up there. So maybe if I do something that is within my reach, I can reach that, right?
It's a great point, and I'm starting to kind of go towards the point where when we talk about readiness to resilience, one of the key questions that I take out of this panel is, are we understanding what are the dimensions of the box? What are the parameters that help us make that transition from being ready to being resilient? Are we trying to kind of take the box completely away and then start to think in a way that makes us consider elements like, is this a black box? Is it not? What are some of the other countries or, technology developments experiences with this strategy? Does it make sense that we start doing that now? Blueprints, perhaps we have a slightly lighter touch approach to here are some of the steps that you need to take when considering the development of such frontier technology and then implementing it. I've got 100 questions in my head right now. And ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first, right? Like, we cannot fly yet, but maybe one day. So I think with that, I want to transition again to Dr. Saad, because we're also quite short in time and I want to wrap up soon. But I think the last question that I'll pose to you, Dr. Saad, is I think many can argue that the blueprint is a great example on how to go from being ready to being resilient. You highlighted quite well that it also takes into consideration many of the elements that Hani has mentioned, not just from the ecosystem approach perspective, but also from, somehow combining a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach that considers the application across different verticals, that consider risks, that talks about issues relating to capacity building and workforce development and beyond. With the successful rollout of the blueprint and your initial implementation here, what lessons learned do you think we can take that might also influence other frontier technologies that are not quantum per se?
So it's like different points. We discussed them in during this great session. Maybe I can just summarize them more or less. I believe the first one is that people first. Mm-hmm. Whether the general public who don't understand about the deep tech, the regulators, or even the workforce. So the workforce, by providing them the tools for the decision makers to understand at least what they really need to understand to make educated decisions, and also for the general public to avoid the hype. So people first, and then comes later on the ecosystem thing. What Hani mentioned about being more of agile in the way of governance, to grab everybody around one table and start talking about it.
Absolutely.
And start really doing the job itself.
I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, we're running out of a bit of time, so we won't have as much time for questions and answers from the audience this afternoon. And as I wrap up, I think I want to take this opportunity, of course, to thank the CST for convening us today, but also my esteemed panelists. In this session, or in the last 40 minutes, I've taken a lot home. I've taken a lot of thought from both Hani and Dr. Saad on what enables a useful transition from readiness to resilience. I've learned a lot more than I knew before coming here about, of course, the quantum economy blueprint. I understood a bit more about the work that the ministry is doing in terms of not just strategy setting and policy making, but also some of the strategic thinking that goes beyond, goes behind and to support the transition from readiness to resilience. We collectively have also learned about some of the initiatives that exist in Saudi Arabia that encourage this ecosystem approach, whether it's MCIT Plus or MCIT++. We've spoken about Digital Regulatory Academy. We've spoken also about all of us coming together here to learn from other experiences, best practices, obviously. We spoke about things like the importance of benchmarking and understanding that oftentimes we're not starting from scratch. Sometimes we are. Sometimes we have to define the parameters of the box before we can start thinking. But some other times we can also take the box completely away and start something slightly newer. So if I am to turn each of you, and this was not in the script, so I'm really excited for it as well. If I am to turn to each of you and ask you to summarize in 3 punchlines, I need 3 punchlines to our audience. What are your key takeaways from today's session? What do you want our audience to leave with? Your 3 punchlines, Dr. Saad.
People are the most important. Mm-hmm. So if you have a message in your life, just deliver it not the way that you are thinking of, but the other side who are taking this information. Yeah. So I think people are the 3 punchlines.
Right, good. Hani?
Just three?
I mean,
Okay.
Go for it.
I'll try to make it as simple as possible. There's a lot to say, and I'd love to share a lot more about all these things and these theories, concepts, and experiments. But the first major takeaway, and I don't think we touched on it directly, but you see what's going on now in the world with deglobalization and every country trying to make its own sovereign play in some domain or another. I think, although that's sad, but it's sort of it's a natural progression of uncertainty that is giving each one of us, each nation, this chance to explore solution spaces that are different from the others. We're not all doing the same thing. We are trying different things, right? Trying different sizes of boxes and all these things. I don't think it's easy to determine that. So that kind of international collaboration, this open dialogue, despite the deglobalization that's going on, is actually beneficial for everybody. As long as we pull through.
Yeah.
That's one. That's one. Okay.
That's one. You got two more.
I'll hinge on Dr. Saad's people thing. I think yes, predominantly even in strategy setting, policy setting, think about people first. Human-centric design. Think about the future. Think about systems and how complex they are. Think about solving things from first principles. Now that we have the tech, we might not need the older institutions. But be humble and accept that things already exist for a reason. Don't try to break things, try to use them as much as possible. So that's the second.
Okay.
And the third is, I love you, man. Thank you for this. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
It's very kind of you. And I'm sorry, sir, we do not have time for questions today, so I won't be able to pass you the mic.
We can talk after, maybe.
Absolutely. You can absolutely talk to them afterwards. My top three would be a bit more, I think, almost cheesier, because I would say connect, innovate, and inspire.
Nice.
Right? We need to connect everyone, so in a way we can innovate. And if we're able to innovate, we're able to also inspire. And if we're able to inspire, then it's not just frontier technologies that we'll be able to get the handle of, but I think it's essentially creating a sustainable future. So those would be my top three, and I haven't practiced these, so I can't admit them. But
Wow,
anyways,
that's amazing.
ladies and gentlemen, my name is Hussein Abou Al-Aneina. I'm the Director for the Middle East at Access Partnership. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. Can you please give us a big round of applause for our audience, and we look forward to having you in the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hussein, and your distinguished speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth session titled Preparing for Quantum Technologies, Lessons from AI Policy Development, to examine the regulatory and governance challenges that quantum technologies present. We are delighted to welcome back to the stage Dr. Samantha Torrance, Principal for Global Government Advisory at Access Partnerships, as the moderator of this upcoming session. Give her a warm welcome.
Great. Hello, everyone, again. I hope you saw the session that I moderated earlier. Very much looking forward to this session on quantum technologies. I think it's very clear, for all of us in this room that quantum technologies, has the potential to, revolutionize not just computing and communications, but also sensing, across the world and in terms of multiple uses of the technology, going forward. And not only is this potential very clear to us, but the risks that it could pertain are also becoming more and more apparent, particularly when we talk about global digital security. So I think it's really apt that we're having the session today, not only to learn a little bit more about quantum technologies and quantum computing, but also to see what we can do to prepare for the policy and governance challenges that will face us going forward. And this is where we start to draw upon some of the lessons that we've seen from the AI experience, not just from a national and regional perspective, but also more globally. So with that being said, I'm very happy to be moderating this session this afternoon. We've got three very distinguished speakers who are very much at the heart of quantum technologies and quantum computing. So it's going to be a great discussion. So to introduce our speakers, firstly, Dr. Nicolo Somaschi, who is the co-founder and chief executive at Quandela, a quantum computing company delivering quantum computing solutions. Nicolo has more than 15 years of experience in semiconductor, photonics, and quantum computing. And really importantly for this session, bridges that gap between research development and the industrial production of the use of that technology. He joined the C2N CNRS laboratory in Paris, where he spun off Quandela. And he's very much at the vanguard of taking quantum computing systems built by semiconductor emitters into their commercial development. Another one of our speakers today is Dr. Mohammed Al-Sharif. He's the general manager of the National Research Development and Innovation Observatory within the Research Development and Innovation Authority, RDIA, and played a leading role in designing the strategy, governance model, and digital platform of the observatory. Within this role, Dr. Sharif developed and institutionalized a national framework to monitor, evaluate, and guide Saudi Arabia's RDI ecosystem. He is previously at the CST as a senior advisor on emerging technology, so very much amongst friends today, and held the role of professor at the King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology University. Our last speaker is Dr. Abdul Rahman Al-Ajmi, pardon. He's the vice chairman and founding member of the Saudi Quantum Computing Association, a non-governmental organization dedicated to raising awareness and building capabilities in quantum technologies. And he's got more than 14 years of experience in digital transformation and project management across government bodies, regulatory commissions, and the private sector, as well as non-governmental organizations. And on that basis, I'd like to introduce and welcome our speakers to the stage. Thank you. Nice to have you. I don't think so, but let's just see for now. Lovely. Great. You all comfortable? Yep. Lovely. So we're going to kick off with perhaps Dr. Alajmi. I actually am an economist by training, so very much, new and getting to know quantum technologies and quantum computing. And I'm sure that there's a number of us in the audience that are not, experts in this field. So I was just wondering if you could start us off with a brief overview of what we're really talking about here. What is the technology, but more importantly, how can it really impact our lives going forward?
Okay, thank you, Samantha. Let's set the stage by talking about quantum. Quantum means the smallest unit of energy or matter. And in the quantum computing context, we are talking about the subatomic particles, such as neutrons or electrons. And what makes these particles fascinating is how they behave. Because at that level, at that tiny level, they behave in a way that's different from our classical world. You will see phenomena like superposition, where particles could represent multiple states at the same time, or entanglement, where two particles could remain connected and change to one will affect the other one at the same time, even if they on opposite side of the universe. And I think these phenomena are not just a scientific concept, they are the foundation for quantum computing. Because the quantum computer is a machine that leverages these phenomena in a way to process information, solve problems in ways that cannot be done by classical computers. And to see the difference, classical computers could take millions of years just to simulate complex molecules, while a quantum computer could achieve that in minutes or hours. And that doesn't mean a quantum computer will replace the classical one, because quantum computer have been designed to solve a set of problems, but their impact is disruptive. Mm-hmm. For example, in healthcare, they could accelerate drugs discovery. In, let's say, transportation or logistics, they could optimize supply chain. In material science, they could help in design the next generation batteries. In AI, they could speed up the machine learning using quantum algorithms. And in cybersecurity, they could break the encryption that we are rely on to secure our communications, infrastructures, or banking. So in my opinion, I think quantum computing isn't just another wave of technology. It's a paradigm shift that will affect many industries in a disruptive way. It will create opportunities, and also it will bring risks. And that's why we need to regulate this technology from now.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that's very much clarified some of the questions that I had. Dr. Samaski, maybe you can speak about where we are in that timescale and that journey. We're talking about, could have this impact and could, support or create these risks. How long are we talking about in terms of the development of quantum technologies and quantum computing?
Yeah, this is indeed the very important way we should look at them, what these machines do, and not only what they are, because the impact comes of what each object can deliver to a certain type of industries. And it's very important to define timescale depending on the type of machine and the value they deliver to a certain use case, to a certain industry. And we can define two regimes. The most valuable is what it was introduced, solving the unsolvable. These are machine, large scale, they will look like data center, and that we call them universal. One quantum data center, quantum supercomputer, by itself, we solve things which are unsolvable today. To get there, there are still a lot of challenges, and the roadmaps of the main quantum providers worldwide and Quandela as well frame this in between 2028, 2030 and beyond. But what do we do until then? Do we have to wait? Do we have to just sit and down and or look in our laboratories? No, we can already fabricate systems which are accelerator of certain applications. So instead of being universal, they make a use case better. And an example is AI. We can develop quantum modules that accelerate or increase the performance of a certain generative network, creating synthetic data with less hallucination, have classification which are more precise. And that's what we do. So we have a period where this processor accelerates rather and combined with other system, classical system, rather than being quantum-centric. And since we speak a lot about AI, we take the same comparison. GPUs started as graphic card, then became used for blockchain, and then became ubiquitous for machine learning. So this learning curve is something that quantum computing should do, and the tools that we develop should aim at this double step.
Well, I mean, you're talking about 2028, 2030. That's not far away when you're talking about what's necessary from a governance or a policy perspective to support not only the innovation, but also putting in place those checks and balances to make sure that, you know, the technology is achieving that positive outcome that we're hoping for. But maybe, Dr. Al-Sharif, maybe I can come to you and you can provide us with a bit more insight in terms of, you know, how is quantum technology and quantum computing being thought of within the kingdom itself, but also what are the advantages and risks that you're kind of grappling with at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me among esteemed speakers and experts. For the advantages, or let's say the most advantage of quantum technologies actually lies in its ability to solve problems that simply beyond the classical or classical computers' ability. So the quantum technology is not about speed, but it's about enabling new entirely capabilities. And I can so in the near future we could see some of the very impactful, actually tangible things on our daily lives, and I can summarize them into three main categories. The first one is about the data security and the digital entity. One of the earliest applications of quantum technology is cybersecurity, apparently. So with the advent of quantum technology or computers with its high capability, we anticipate that the current encryption will be broken, and this is actually brings much attention to secure the encryption and the secure data. So also this actually shows or brings in the near future the importance of post-quantum cybersecurity, the quantum key distribution application as well, to safeguard the sensitive data like the banking, our healthcare, the financial transactions, you name it. The second also impact and that we could see in our daily life is the healthcare or the precise medicine. So we anticipate the quantum technology will accelerate the analysis, especially for or dealing with the huge data like the genetic and biomedical data, and this will shorten the timeline of the personalized medicine. The third actually impact we could see in the near future as well is about the optimization in every day systems. For example, so you think about the energy grid, the logistics that actually deliver our goods. So applying the quantum optimization algorithm, it will definitely reduce, let's say, the time that's needed for to deliver goods. Reduce the energy waste by applying a very sophisticated algorithms to optimize the distribution of energy. So we do believe the quantum presence will bring a lot of opportunities and advantages, but at the same time we need to be cautious and balance between the speed and the trust, the security and the openness. Thank you.
Great. No, excuse me, I think you pick up on a number of key practical policy issues that, you know, regulators and governments are dealing with at the moment. You know, huge potential in front of us, but, you know, the speed, it's not that far along in terms of becoming more ubiquitous than what we have at the moment. But I think for me, and you mentioned sort of the risk, particularly around digital security and this kind of Q-day, you know, potential, you know, catastrophe that might occur for, you know, digital security. I remember back to the days of, you know, the millennium bug, and when everybody was talking about that. And I don't see as many people talking about Q-day outside of a very limited sort of set of professionals that work within that area. Maybe, Dr. Al-Ajmi, you work kind of within that sort of education sector. What is the sort of understanding of quantum technologies, both the positives and the risks that we're seeing in, you know, in everyday life, but also citizens who will be interacting with it in the future?
Yes, I think it's this technology is too complex, and a lot of before the session I was discussed with Dr. Nicholas, we share the same thing. I think it's still we need to raise awareness about the technology. As what you said, no one talk about the Q-day.
Yeah.
And that's what we are in the Saudi Quantum Association. We are working on raising awareness in the community, because we don't need to repeat the mistakes in AI policy making. So one, or let's say the main initiative that we are working on is raising awareness. I think that's very important, and to start with the people. And in the raising awareness, we are working with policymakers, regulators, and government officials to make sure they know what's the impact and why it's important to regulate the technology from now. And also we are working on other regulations, as it said, to let the people sharing the knowledge about this. We're trying to create a community of practice. And that's one of the main initiatives that we are working on, engagement and collaboration. Because in AI policymaking, they were done it in silos, which leads to mistrust or maybe slowing the progress. And the third initiative that we are working on is building capabilities. And I think, as we said, it's too complex to build such a capability in Saudi Arabia and even other countries. And that's why we are support training and partnerships to build local capabilities, because we saw in AI, the education systems didn't fill the gap for the skills gap. So I think we should start by awareness, so let the people talk about the technology and know what's the impact, and to overcome the challenge that we will face when we're trying to regulate this technology.
Great. And Nicolo, maybe I can come to you from more of a European perspective in terms of particularly workforce development. And we were talking about the understanding of the technology from more of a demand side, but from a supply side perspective, how are we going to make sure that we have, you know, those engineers and those researchers that really know what they're talking about to really drive forward the technology?
Yes, we have to start from the research institute, from academics, government policies, awareness, and bring tools to the ground. And as Candela comes from a research institute, we know what it means transferring research into innovation, into products. And that's the role that we bring. We sit in between academics, government, and end user, and bring innovation to products and connect all these dots. What's also very important in terms of knowledge and transfer is the ability to have machines, even small scale, that can be accessed anywhere.
Yeah.
So cloud software, cloud available system, that's something that can be integrated already in master courses. And that's something we have started to do in France. We start to do that in Korea as well, where we are present, and bring to students, computer science students, software tools to learn about quantum computing, but not on the physics way, on the algorithm way. So once again, looking at the use of a machine, not what's inside. What's inside is part of engineers. We do that. It's fun, but the most important thing is what to do with that. So cloud, software tools, master courses, creating center of excellence, and work hand in hand with the government institution to find the good partners and bring this workforce up to speed, because just with workforce related in a country, there will be resilience. And it was said before, and I totally agree with that.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Dr. Al-Sharif, given your background being an educator within Saudi Arabia, what lessons can we take from the upskilling from an AI perspective into, this new technology that we're looking at?
I think this is very empirical and critical questions. Certainly, there are, lessons we could learn from the AI. But before actually, come to the lessons, I think we need to shed light on the differences that when we think about quantum. First of all, in terms of technology maturity, the quantum technology is still in its early life cycle. And this is actually going to give us kind of an advantage to act in a proper time and to be prepared for the regulations, policies, and whatnot. Nowadays, the AI, it's deployed at scale, and the regulations actually came after. And this is not the case. So if the government regulators as well, starting from now, engaging with the relevant stakeholders to prepare for the regulations, I think would be a plus. The second difference evolves around the risk associated with each technology. In AI, mostly it links to the ethical and societal risks, and this is not the case with the quantum technology or computing, where it actually shows risk with the technical and systematic aspects. So the way of approaching and dealing with the two different technologies, I think, should be different as well. For example, the quantum computing, as I said earlier, could break the encryption of using the current computational capabilities, and this would bring to our attention to design specific, tailored, let's say, policies to prevent such things. The third one is about the infrastructure dependencies. For the AI, it can deploy it on the current or existing digital infrastructure, and this is not the case with the quantum technologies, especially in some applications like quantum communication or quantum cybersecurity. It requires different kind of hardware that's tailored for such things, and I think Dr. Nicholas shed light on that. So in terms of lesson, the AI, I think, benefited from the kind of a transparency, engaging with the stakeholders. In addition to that, for quantum technology, we need as well to work closely with the relevant stakeholders, design and engaged with the hardware manufacturers as well to avoid any potential risks in the future. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we've talked about capacity and understanding, and maybe I can sort of direct us to the policy and the regulatory capacity that we have. It is a new technology, and there are varying maturities of regulatory bodies across the world, and even within regulators, even mature ones, we're talking about a technology that, a lot of people won't necessarily understand, from the start. So maybe, Dr. Al-Ajmi, in your work within Saudi Arabia, but maybe more broadly, how has the interaction been sort of from a policy setting and from a regulatory setting, and how are we building capacity within the government to actually also be able to play its role within this new frontier?
I think we need to act much faster in terms of regulating quantum computing, because the quantum computing brings with it a lot of challenge to regulate it. I think there are three main challenges in regulating such a new technology. The first one is time, and I think we saw that with AI, because this technology is moving faster than we expected. And usually the regulators moves much slower. And the second challenge, I think, it's the complexity for quantum computing. It's too complex to understand, and also it will disrupt many industries in a disruptive way. And that's what makes regulating it is very difficult. You cannot regulate it with a simple regulation. And also the third challenge is cost. I think we need to set the strategy to move to the post-quantum cryptography and to, let's say, the transition for quantum era. And that will be very expensive for both regulators, government, and maybe also the private sectors. And the problem with that, let's say, the regulators need to work faster to manage this cost and overcome this challenge. So I think there are many challenges that hold us back from regulating this technology now, but with the right strategy, with the right preparation, I think we can make the transition to the quantum era will be safe, successful, and sustainable.
Okay, great. Well, Nicolo, I'm not sure if you caught the earlier session with Natalie Black, but she was talking about her experiences at Ofcom, which is, as you know, the UK's communications regulator. And one thing that she mentioned, which really stuck with me, was, you know, the point about regulators not necessarily having to regulate everything. And actually one of the roles that they play is to support industry and to support innovation, whilst obviously also protecting, you know, the citizens of those countries. But, you know, in your interactions, both kind of from an academic perspective, but also, you know, the company that you lead, you know, within the private sector, what is the nature of your interactions with regulators at the moment? And what is that partnership and what does it look like?
Yeah, so today, and I think it's been a couple of years, that both at the national French level and member states in Europe that have been a consortium made by quantum computing providers and scientists to start to bring awareness, but also look at benchmarking, common benchmarking, to push at the international levels.
Yep.
So regulation, I think, on the quantum computing, quantum technology perspective, is starting by defining the good benchmarking to then define dangers, zones, and protect them. Though benchmark is also hard today, we have to admit it, because once again, most of providers start to look at properties of systems rather than what the system do. It's like benchmarking cars and looking at the colors rather than the speed of the engine power. So we are in this big debate at the moment. One thing though, on the regulator's perspective, I think it's safe, is that we know what current machine do. And in order to be dangerous at the point of putting at risk cryptography system, we know that we are far. Nevertheless, we don't know what we can discover in between that can be potentially dangerous for some aspects. So once again, awareness and local bodies that interacts at international level openly, as the community have started to do, is the good approach. And of course, a very deep look also in the technology, which is hard, but must be done.
And maybe if I could just ask a follow-up question to that. You mentioned that you're working obviously very closely in France, but also in Korea, I think you mentioned.
Yes.
Have you noticed any differences in approaches that the regulators have taken there in terms of your interaction?
We have seen 2 or 3 schools, European, US, and China, I will say, that is bringing interesting exchanges, and there is work to be done. We are not in a rush, so that's good, but we also need to keep in mind that innovation goes very fast, and if we look at, once again, at AI, from 2012 to 2014, there was a complete paradigm shift from current neural networks, GPU, that started to bring a lot of attention, and 2012, where there was no even idea of what we could have been done. So we have to keep in mind not to fall in the same mistake and rush, but push the discussion openly at the international level.
Okay, great. Dr. Al-Sharif, working within an innovation agency, we've talked about sort of, national collaboration and working with stakeholders, at a local level. But I was just wondering how you've interacted, through the national agency on a regional basis and even internationally when you're discussing these topics.
Yes, interesting. As you said, so being part of the RDI authority, where we regulate and responsible for the R&D innovation ecosystem in its broad meaning, and one of the main pillars of the R&D national strategy that's being, developed and approved is what's called it's a big missions. So one of the main missions that has been announced in last February during the LEAP event was about the building a quantum computer, fault-tolerant quantum computers, of course, with the partnerships with many local and stakeholders, mainly led by Aramco, 3 leading universities, KAUS, KFUPM, and King Saud, and with RDI as well. Also, there's a partnership with like a global partners who are very advanced in quantum technology. This is one angle. The different or the other point is to be ready for the advent of quantum technologies and prepare the right policies. So we need to design the proper policies with the foresight. And even under the observatory at RDIA, we have a specialized unit for, it's called Foresight Technology, that does study and analyze all the emerging technologies. And one of them basically is the quantum technology, to see the trends, where are the, let's say, or to have a forward-looking, let's say, insights, and to have kind of informed or fact-based decisions and recommendations. This is just from the innovation or perspective or the strategy of innovation on how to tackle and let's say taking into considerations this point. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, there's a lot to be talking about here, when we're looking at it from a policy perspective and from a regulatory perspective. And maybe, Dr. Al-Ajmi, through your work, what have been the sort of the challenges that you faced the most, from a perhaps financing perspective or understanding? What are the things that you have to encounter and overcome on a daily basis?
I think, as what said, the main 3 challenges with quantum computing is time and cost, and also the complexity of the technology. It's too complex to understand. You are talking about technology, how it's work. As what maybe Nicola said, the regulators usually focus on how the systems work, and they need to focus on what's the change that will do, or let's say, impact the industries. So I think the main challenge is maybe first I would say awareness. We need to raise the awareness among the policymakers and government officials, so to start from now to prepare for this technology and how to deal with it. In the term of financing, I think the transition will be very expensive. We need to set a stage or maybe phase timeline to overcome this challenge. And the third one is maybe the building the capabilities. We saw that with AI, how the education system failed to bridge the gap, and also for the quantum computing, it will be more complex because it's a transdisciplinary subject. You need a physicist, you need quantum computer background, you need mechanical engineering background, etc. So I think these are the 3 main challenges. And one more thing that I will add is how to balance in regulation between the innovation, to open for innovation, and also to not over-regulate the technology. But still, I think we need to see something on the ground about regulating the technology. I think we are far away from this, and maybe I would say the first challenge I will emphasize on it will be to to convince the leaders to the impact of this technology and how it's important to regulate it from now.
No, you make a fascinating point around, how you actually regulate. And actually some of the work that we do with CST is on through the Digital Regulatory Academy, and we're talking about the approach to regulating emerging technologies and effectively the toolkit that's in front of regulators to be able to not just understand what they're dealing with, but also then to respond accordingly and with the right level of, scrutiny or impact. And one of the concepts that we often talk about is, principles-based regulation, where we focus a lot more on the outcome of that we're aiming to achieve, as opposed to necessarily the specific output or the box that is necessary to tick. And I know that CST very much, takes that that direction in terms of the regulation and the regulatory approach that it implements. And I think it's very apparent here when you talk about also how we bridge that gap between understanding what we're talking about, and so focusing less on how it actually works, but actually what the impact and what the outcome is going to be. So perhaps as we sort of engage regulators going forward, it's also about encouraging to them to think about, yes, quantum is still something that we all have to understand, but let's not react too aggressively to sort of regulate when actually what we're looking at more is the outcome of what we're hoping to achieve. And perhaps that should be front and foremost to some of the discussions that are happening kind of, across the world on regulation in particular. But Nicola, maybe I can pick up on a point that you mentioned, and it was fascinating to hear that there are, well, fascinating perhaps on one hand, or, not too unexpected on the other, the three schools of thought that you mentioned around, how sort of global perspectives are shaping when it comes to quantum technologies. And you mentioned the sort of three poles of influence in that regard. We've also seen that from an AI perspective. And when you look at, international dialogue on AI governance, that has very much been apparent in terms of, very hard rules on one side and let's wait and see innovation first sort of approaches. Do you think that that kind of almost bifurcation in approach is a risk for the development and innovation of quantum? Or is this an opportunity that could also be leveraged where certain jurisdictions perhaps, are the first movers, for instance?
It's a good point, and I'm not an expert in that to pronounce what's good or not. But once again, if we look back at other digital transformation that we have been living recently, once again, AI, because it's everywhere, it was just through open innovation that we arrive where we are, where research institutes develop some algorithmic solution and they just ran them on another machine with respect to what the other community was doing. And that's how machine learning neural network got this boost. So forcing a restriction today, I don't think it's good for the ecosystem, neither for fundamental science discoveries. Although it's maybe interesting to keep an eye on what we could see ahead and potentially make plans. But once again, starting from today, we'll just slow down and really put at risk development, which is just to come freely everywhere. So access to cloud is something very important. Access to machine, I believe, is something very important. So export control on some equipment for quantum computing is already started. And it's risky. And we've seen some example I cannot share. But as we're building digital innovation, we're bringing also in industry. So we're building components, we're building manufacturing and site plants. And that should be considered developing a national plan where this come from if those countries start to put restrictions.
Great. I think, Dr. El-Sharif, maybe I can pick up on the points that Nicola was talking about, and also, well, all three of you have mentioned the importance of stimulating that innovative environment. But maybe I could ask you to play devil's advocate and maybe speak a little bit more about the risks. And one point that you mentioned earlier was when you were sort of comparing, AI and quantum, you talked about ethical risk and perhaps, maybe that's not as apparent or at the forefront from a quantum perspective. I'm sure that you would find an audience out there that would challenge you on that point, in the sense of, particularly if quantum is being used to enhance AI capabilities, and we know that AI has potential ethical, and human-centric type risks, that would be the case for quantum. So from your perspective, and maybe putting on a different hat, how can we make sure that whilst we're still supporting innovation, whether from a regulatory perspective or from a policy perspective, we're keeping a solid eye to the risks, and particularly from a human perspective of what quantum may hold?
Yes, thank you. I think the first point on the risk aspects is to pay attention about since it's in a sense the quantum computing or quantum technology, it's inherently cross-border technology. So, and you can, if you lay down all the stakeholders and the developers of this technology, they have presence like on different countries and geographical area. So this would necessitate to have more global coordination to mitigate this kind of misstandardized technology and policy. The other element also, as I said earlier, to balance between the openness and the security, since it has the quantum dual usage for the civilian and maybe for like defense applications. So this is a critical point to not to stifle too much the innovation, but at the same time setting the right standards and policies to manage any of these risks. Also to keep, to keep pace with the technology advancements, especially in quantum cybersecurity angles. I think it's important to be prepared in terms of having the right policy at the right time. This is, so in a nutshell, maybe shed light on the risk associated with the quantum.
It's a big nutshell that you've laid out there. But I think the point about, dual-use technologies obviously complicates the situation that we're dealing with, particularly from a policy perspective. And I'm sure, as we see new technologies emerge, that's going to continue to be something that we are faced with. It's interesting. I was just looking at my notes as I was preparing for the session. I was trying to draw, what would be the lessons that we would be taking from the kind of AI policy and governance, process over the last couple of years. And it's, well, you passed with top marks because a number of the things that were on my list you've already mentioned. And I'll just go through these quickly because I think it's important to really draw the comparison between what we've already encountered, and there's still work to be done for sure on the AI front, but also where we need to really, put some impetus behind our actions on the quantum side. So, early and broad stakeholder engagement, which I think we've talked about, and that also extends to kind of the capacity building and the awareness point. Balancing this innovation and risk point, which will be forever the challenge that regulators and governments face. Robust international collaboration. And I think one could argue either way on sort of what we've achieved at the moment on AI, but certainly there is broad understanding and acceptance of, baseline standards and principles for the use and the deployment of ethical and responsible AI. So I think that is an achievement that has been reached internationally. The point I think that's really crucial for this technology is the pacing problem. So the speed at which the technology advances versus how fast we as a government or a policy or regulator, a policymaker or regulator can actually not just respond, but also be prepared, but also help to support the innovation. And that will be a challenge. And then, embedding principles of transparency, accountability, and fairness. I think, yes, we talk about awareness and understanding what we're talking about, but we also need to make sure that these core fundamental principles, which are really at the heart of kind of human centricity around technology, are really core. And again, one could argue that we've made some strides on AI, but, in terms of the oversight and making sure that that really is the case, within the application of that technology is still something that we need to test. So in terms of then how to sort of draw a conclusion from that, some of the recommendations sort of from papers that I've read have spoken about, developing standards, really early on, for that post-quantum cryptography world that we're talking about, and, quantum key distribution, for instance. Testing and the validity of the frameworks that we're developing, as well as, really investing in R&D for safety, security, and ethics purposes. And so maybe I'll put that back to the three of you as we sort of come to the end of the panel. What do you think that we've achieved so far in that regard? Have we done enough? Are we on the right path? Or is there still quite a lot of work to be done? Maybe Dr. El?
I think we already have something in terms of what standards for encryptions. We already saw NIST come up with 4 standards for post-quantum cryptography. But still, I think we need more steps toward regulating this technology. As we said, it's too complex. It's need a lot of collaboration even between governments and regulators body. We are trying to regulate, maybe with AI, we are trying to regulate the technology itself. However, in quantum computing, we are trying to regulate the consequences and also how to interpolate the quantum key distribution and find the standard to make the development is cheaper than the silos work or, let's say, efforts. So I think the key recommendations from me, I would say, to be proactive toward this technology and trying to regulate it from now. I think in terms of we are far or not, I think we are still far from regulating this technology, and we need to do more efforts toward regulating this technology. And I hope we see that as soon as possible.
Great. Nicolo, what are your thoughts?
I think one of the best thing is the fact that we are discussing about. Mm-hmm. So we are here, we are asking ourselves the good question, and thank you all for this. I join what has been said in the cybersecurity and post-quantum cryptography. That's the first step we have to take. NIST has been pushing a lot since many years, and other nations are following. And this benchmarking, it's very important. On the computing side, I think it's very important that both provider and scientists keep doing their job. Propose and innovate, but also validate through peer-reviewed scientific publication, and even follow what AI community has been doing, where each novel algorithm is benchmarked by the entire community. And there are software platforms that are based on community that validate or disprove innovation. And that's the best way, I think, also quantum computing can self-regulate itself on what applications are really validated, and that put each time a benchmark where institutions can really look at safely, internationally, without geopolitical filters, and then act from there. So I take it on our side. We have started with the platform that is benchmarking quantum AI algorithms, but it should be enlarged and keep growing.
Great. Dr. Al-Sharif.
Yes, I would say it. So I would take it from the local perspective, from 1,000, let's say, feet height. So I think we need to have 2 main elements. The first one dealing with the ecosystem itself, to have it ready to adopt and accommodate, let's say, what does it take to have the thrive in the quantum technology, and also to prepare the proper policies and regulations. And I would like, to mention here a couple of examples here that's, happening here in Saudi. For example, we have kind of a couple of clusters that bring the entrepreneurs, the scientists, for example, the garage, the NTDB at MCIT, the Ministry of Communication, also Dhahran Valley with the close proximity to Aramco, Lab 7. All these physical places, I think, they bring together the talents, the environment enabled by certain, let's say, policies and regulations to make that thrive. And should be, supported by the proper regulations and policies. As I said, to have more advancement in the quantum space and to have a very prosper, let's say, applications of it. Thank you.
Great. And maybe if you allow me, I think from a policy perspective, two things that really stand out, in addition to what you've captured already is your regulatory expertise and capacity. And I think, the role of the regulator is to understand the sector that it operates in, and it can learn definitely from the sector and from industry, the private sector, from academia, but it needs to also kind of integrate that knowledge internally as it starts to make its policies and formulate its regulations. So really prioritizing that, I think, is something that we need to kind of put more focus on. And then secondly, I think we've already touched upon it, but that international cooperation point, technology is, a cross-border phenomena, and, for all of us to benefit from that, but also to make sure that we are mitigating any potential risk, it does require collaboration and I wouldn't say necessarily exact coordination, but certainly coherence between approaches that are being taken, across the world. So I think, as you said, Nicola, we're talking about the subject, and I think we've got some good points to sort of pick up, and perhaps we can walk across to the main ITU agenda and present some of our thoughts, to further these conversations. But I'm going to stop there. I think that we've had a really fulfilling discussion this afternoon. It's a very complex subject, and I'm sorry we won't be taking questions in this session, unfortunately. But I just wanted to thank the speakers again for being here with us today, for taking the time to go through, the complexities of this issue, but also, highlighting really what, fundamental work is going on in the background, which is really exciting to hear. So thank you very much, and thank you to the audience. Thank you.
Of our moderator, Ms. Fatima Fahad, GEOSA's official spokesperson and media advisor. Welcome her to the stage. تفضلي.
This lovely conference we are having. Now, allow me to go ahead and call on my colleagues who will be sharing this session with me and having this lovely discussion this evening. I would like to call on Engineer Ali Awaji, Executive Director of National Geospatial Data Governance, and my colleague, Engineer Hussam Al-Talhi, Manager of National Coverage, and Dr. Sahar Jawad, Executive Director of the Project Management Office, and Ms. Wajdan Asiri, Manager of Regulation and Policy. Please join me in welcoming them on stage. I think we will need one more chair, please. We need a seat. All right. So until we get that sorted, Engineer Hussam, please. So let me tell you a little bit about GEOSA and what we do. So the General Authority of Survey and Geospatial Information, known as GEOSA, aims really to regulate, advance, and supervise the surveying and geospatial information and imaging sector in the kingdom, achieving, of course, quality and improving performance in accordance with global and international best practices. This includes adopting and developing the national geospatial infrastructure, preparing strategic plans, conducting studies and research, as well as attracting investments, among other things as well. And I think we should get this. All right, there you go. There's our seat coming right there. So this gets us warmed up to start our conversation this evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, please. Okay. So until we get this sorted out, maybe we will get our thoughts also running on what we want to speak about today, and having GEOSA as the regulator of the sector of geospatial information here with us, maybe that would give us the initiation of our conversation. We will just give them a moment. Maybe I'll start with you, Mohandas Ali. I wanted to talk to you about GEOSA and its several vital tasks that it has today. Tell me the most prominent of them, please.
Thank you, Fatma, and I would like to thank all of the audience, Your Excellency, and the distinguished guests who is interested in the regulation and regulating activities in different sectors. So thank you for having GEOSA today. GEOSA is basically the regulator of the geospatial sector within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That brings us to a very interesting topic. We started as a very challenging situation back in maybe 5 to 10 years ago. We started with this challenge where geospatial data is needed, geospatial data is acknowledged, but the challenge is with quality. We have poor quality, we have less regulation activity, which made the government or made the decision makers to allow and support the establishment of or re-establishment of GEOSA as the regulator of the geospatial sector, focusing on a number of activities, basically to enable the establishment of infrastructures, allowing and establishing and approving policies to enable our users, and not only our users, but to also enable our community to participate in the development of geospatial sector. From that, we can draw the attention on number of activities. From these activities, as I mentioned, infrastructure and policy making, representing GEOSA in number of initiatives globally, and leading the whole geospatial industry, not only regionally, but in the Arab states community. We are very well heard. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is very well advancing in regulating geospatial activities and bringing up together the enablement of geospatial data to our users and communities, from all the way from government entities to private sector and academia, trying to live up to this challenge and trying to solve it. And hopefully this session will help us to understand more what efforts that we adopted and achieved to empower the geospatial sector.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mohandas Ali, for touching on that subject, infrastructure of geospatial. And that takes me to you, Engineer Hussam. What does geospatial infrastructure mean exactly? Who does it serve?
First of all, I would like to share with you the mic, if you allow me. Now let's move to the...
And could you please bring the chair closer for me?
Let's move
okay. Yes, closer so I can sit. Thank you very much.
Our infrastructure that we are utilizing to build the future. We are building a digital world that's helping us and making us making this information or geospatial information useful through our portal or through single truth, our data truth. And I would like to mention many things that I would like to get here. I would like to start with the numbers. Let's start with the numbers that talking about our infrastructure. We do have more than or about 4,000 ground station that has the gravity and also the elevation data that we are working with. Also, we do have about 41 absolute relative ground station for gravity. I'm talking about numbers and some of the sensor that we are using. It's almost like it will be hard for you, but I will be explaining this later. And also we contribution to have a baseline of all the kingdom to have everything measured up to 1 centimeter or centimeter accuracy. This has been supported with about 209 course station working 24 hours to have all the information delivered to the consumer.
So just so I understood you correctly, Engineer Hussam, you're saying that these numbers, the 209 cores, they've almost 3,000 or 4,000 national gravity network stations, those will give me accuracy data so that it can serve remote cars, smart cities, self-driving cars, and all that?
Yeah, you touched the subject that I am talking about now. It's giving the full picture of our daily life. We order food from any applications. Also, we order our taxi through our website. To get your taxi and to get your food delivered to your home, it's relative to the accuracy of the geospatial information, up to 1 centimeter. Also, I would like to add something interesting, that we already cover about 290 city and village by using a 3D scanning, using also panoramic imaging and also the 3D scanning. Why is that? We are also enabling all the new technology, the future. We are building the infrastructure to have the future enabled by supporting the self-driving cars. Anyone can now ride a car with a trusted geospatial data to go from point A to point B. Also we are supporting mobilizing people, not also on the ground, also in the sky. We support some initiative called taxi, air taxi, and this is something amazing that you saw, unmanned vehicles transfer people from A to B through the sky. Also, the smart cities, and this is the trend, I think now, to have the smart city and the digital twin. This is what I will like to show you something interesting about this. What we are seeing now, it's digital twin that's converting our real world to the digital. We are in the digital world. We can calculate, we can also measure our platform, our 3D perspective for everything inside our economy. Also, what we are seeing here, it's something in the future, and also we can solve problems like flood analysis. Imagine that we do have a certain of percentage that we will have a rain in an area. We can simulate this, and we can test our infrastructure. We can have a better decision for our government. Also, we are supporting the environmental. How can this happen in here? Also, we can measure the footprint that's affect taking our carbon and giving the oxygen. We are supporting environmental sustainability by also measuring the trees, also measuring having the statistic for how much we are contributing this world.
Beautiful.
In the end, we are contributing with the engineering and building the future by having everything digitizing and having the 3D perspective for all the community. You can redesign, replan, or even doing all the measurement and doing all the scenarios without going to the real world by using the computer and using the 3D dimensional city, you can do whatever you want in this, and you have the better decision and also accurate as the data provided.
Beautiful. So just right in your chair, you can do all of that, just sitting where you are, doing the analysis, doing the data, doing crisis management, playing scenarios, even putting solutions for it, just right where you are. Beautiful. So now that takes me to you, Dr. Sahar. Our colleagues spoke about the infrastructure. It seems quite ready for investment. So the question here is, what is GEOSA's role in really promoting and getting those investments to the sector?
First of all, I warmly welcome to everyone today, and it's my pleasure to be part of this huge event and this discussion about promising sectors, which is geospatial sector. It's always good to look at the number first, but before explain the number, I will highlight GEOSA role on shaping the geospatial sectors and make it this sector is attractive for investment. So one of the central role of GEOSA that building a strong geospatial infrastructure that can attract the investor and supporting the innovation. And the national strategy, the national geospatial national strategy, it's one of these achievements that working to enabling the investment with clear economic impact. So it is expected economic impact, 11 billion Saudi riyal in GDP, and additional 10,800 additional jobs, and 1.2 additional investment by 2023. This is not the only achievement for GEOSA. Also, there is too many initiatives done by GEOSA, which is make this sectors very attractive for investor. One of them, licensing system, which is make the sector it's clear and for all the investment. The 19, which we can see here on the screen, the 19 classification activities that classify according to national economic activities system, which is very clear, make all the activities on the sectors clear for investor and give a clear picture about the activities available. This is not the only one. In the future, it can be more. One more things here about the achievement, which is Geo Sandbox, a platform to testing all the solutions and turn it on to the project. I can just mention one more thing, which is very important: the future activities, economic activities initiatives, which will be turning on some of activities, geospatial activities, to investment opportunities, and all this make this sectors it's very attractive.
Beautiful. Sounds good. And I know that GEOSA having that kind of strength point when it comes to investment has a lot of background, hard work throughout the years that led to GEOSA to be a role model in the region, and also has its print globally as well. Could you tell me more about that, Wujdan, please?
Well, first, thank you, Fatma, and good afternoon to you and to everyone here. It's an honor to be here today, as I consider myself lucky to share a story that reflects how visionary leadership combined with dedicated effort, enriched by international cooperation, right? Here. Enriched by international cooperation and knowledge exchange can create real impact and meaningful results. So in recent years, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has made a really remarkable progress in empowering and regulating the geospatial sector. at national, regional, and international levels.
That's true.
And today, Saudi Arabia, represented by the General Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information, is a member of more than 15 international organizations and regional committee.
It's those we're seeing here on the screen, correct?
Yes, such as IHO,
Beautiful.
FIG, ISPRS, where the kingdom not only represents itself, it also serves as the regional voice for the Arab world. So in that regard, Saudi Arabia chairs the UNGGIM Arab States Committee, chairs the regional organization for the protection of the marine environment, and also is a founding member of the International Advisory Committee of the United Nations Global Knowledge and Innovation Center in China.
That's beautiful.
So, as my colleague Engineer Ali will give you more details about it later, the Saudi governance framework was adopted also last year by the UNGGIM Arab State Committee to be a guideline to help building similar governance frameworks. So these achievements highlight the kingdom's role in advancing the geospatial landscape internationally.
Beautiful, and I'm glad, Wujdan, you touched on that, governance and a framework, because that's exactly the point I would like to discuss with you, Engineer Ali. Could you tell me more about GEOS's efforts when it comes to governance, when it comes to the framework Wujdan was talking about?
Certainly, Fatma, and thank you, Wujdan, for elaborating this as an introduction. First, let's ask ourselves a question. Why governance? What does governance mean, and why it's so necessary to establish such an organization? Basically, as I mentioned before, we started with a very, very challenging situation where we have a number of data producers. Basically, they go ahead and produce geospatial data that is relevant to a number of usage, as mentioned by my colleague Hussam. But more importantly, what's the effect on having as much geospatial data as possible to being produced? It has an effect basically or directly to the budget of the government organization, but not only that, it will affect the geospatial data quality. It affect as a result our trust in the geospatial data that we have, and more importantly, it will create a confusion among our users. So basically, GEOSA has started a geospatial governance initiative. Later on, it has it resulted to decisions by our GEOSA board of directors approve the national organization of the geospatial sector as a form of a governance framework that is including roles and responsibility. Basically, who does produce what and for how long and for how many times in different sectors or different subjects. And that takes me to another point which is important to mention. Basically, the geospatial sector have been divided in 15 different subjects. We call them foundational themes. For example, a theme that is related to, for example, transportation. We always use transportation to move, as mentioned by my colleague, from point A to point B. But there are a number of foundation themes similar to transportation. For example, addresses that allows us to know exactly where we're going, how to use our national address, and there are a number of human-related activities and other foundational data themes that is available as a national organization of the whole sector. As a result of that, we needed, in GEOSA, needed to establish a guidelines to help us to use these geospatial data. That comes to a form of policies, standards, specification. So basically the policies is to tell people what to do and what to ignore or what to stop doing, or maybe how to do it in a manner that preserves security, allows sustainability, and also provide our, I would say, stakeholders with a clear vision how to use geospatial data and also to stay within the framework that allows for achieving our visionary 2030 vision that has number of goals. From that goals maybe quality of life and so on. One important thing maybe to close on with this question is that GIUSA not only work to provide an overall governance, but also GIUSA provided number of tools that allow of establishment of these and implementation of these governance. And there are a number of examples and best practices that we collaborated with, as mentioned by Wujdan earlier. We are collaborating with a very international established organization called OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium, which helped us to form these kind of direction. We are also attending and being part of an international organization like the ISO, IHO for hydrography and marine activities, and so on. So basically, we're trying to regulate in an idea to enable and to empower.
All right, beautiful. Now, that being said, being the regulator, Engineer Hussam, you mentioned such great examples a little bit ago. You talked about a digital twin. You talked about a lot of nice things that we can use with the geospatial information data. But now, as a regulator, and what Ali mentioned as well, how can giga and mega projects in Saudi Arabia take advantage of those and of this regulations and this data? Could you give us some real life examples, perhaps?
Sure.
To clarify the picture?
Sure, but as I am a number guy, I would like to start with the numbers.
Sure, we love numbers.
Yes. I would like to mention that in the hydrography survey, we already complete a 100% covering of the Red Sea. This is what we call it the survey for the Red Sea, the seabed. And also we are completing the 75% for the Gulf, Arabian Gulf. And to have these numbers and to have the survey for about 1,200 islands, we are rich of island, alhamdulillah, this is something great. And the question will come before we are supporting the mega project. Why is this number, why GIUSA invest in this huge amount of project? Is it not just the maps, it's accurate seabed that coverage the impact and impacting the navigation safety. And also the vessels carrying our goods and energy, also the resource, and also we are using this for environmental monitoring and maritime security. This is very important and crucial for our nation because we are in the having the access of the Red Sea and the Arabian Gulf. And to have the security of this, we are doing this. The impact will come, as you know, our visionary 2030. We are supporting the quality of life. We do have, we need the safe navigation for our vessels to mobilize the people and also our goods and energy. And the
cruise ships also,
yeah,
maybe.
The cruise ship, yeah. I'm planning to this also. And this is something it's crucial for us. I would like also to touch something related to our conference here, the communication. The communication is very important. And I will touch something, it's called the submarine cables. The submarine cables, it's more than 99% of our communication now or in the future or in all the world, it's going through the sea, the seabed, through this submarine cables that connect all the worlds together and to have it in one village called the internet. And also we are trading the power also by the power line that we have to have the maintenance and laying out of this submarine cables and also monitoring the submarine cables. We will be using the seabed navigation and also the survey. Also, I would like to add that we are doing the biggest project in the world using the unmanned vessels, and that will impact our environment because we do have a lower footprint of carbon that's affecting our world.
And that's one of the goals of the Vision 2030.
This is one of the goals, and also it's including in the program of the 2030, that's quality of life. we are supporting the quality of life by doing this and by saving our environment. Also, I would like to highlight something that maybe you see some sharks here.
I was about to ask you about that. What's with the shark eating that cable?
Yeah, we are not helping also only the engineers and the communicators and everything. Also, we are helping the sharks. The sharks looking for snacks. It's seeing these cables are tasty. And
They're messing with our internet.
Yes, they are. They are. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. And so those cables, just to clarify, you know, the location of those cables, how to locate those cables, it's all geospatial data, correct?
Yes.
All
yes.
right, beautiful.
That's showing how work beneath the waves, like it's a very vital for our life or our digital above of this. Like we are a connecting world, even behind these waves and also above these waves.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so with all that being said, Dr. Sahar, يعني what Ali mentioned, what Hussam mentioned, it seems like the geospatial sector is such a promising sector for investment, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, Fatima. And I will start with numbers as engineering Hussam start as well. So if we can just looking to the number that geospatial analytics market, just analytics market, currently it is $370 million and expected to be on the next 5 years to be $570 million with annual compound growth rate 9.2. And this is demonstrate how the geospatial market, it's very promising because this is just, as I said, an analytics market, excluding the activities and other aspects in the market. Additional to this, as engineering Hussam mentioned, there is an increased demand for geospatial data and technology in all the sectors. All the sectors, communications, smart cities, energy, transportation. So this is really make the geospatial market, it's very, very promising market. One more thing, or two more things I will add here about why geospatial market, it's very promising. It is very wide range. It's provide very or introduce very wide range of services and the product, and this is give the investor huge chances to innovate and to work in this market. And we can add to this, it is very innovative sectors using the emerging technology and the new technology with clear impact, clear economic impact in terms of GDP, in terms of investment, in terms of jobs. All this make geospatial sectors, it's very, very promising.
Beautiful. And as you know, Dr. Sahar, GEOSA has left its print, as Wajdan said earlier, not only locally and regionally, but also internationally. Could you emphasize more on that, Wajdan, please?
Yeah, well, with the unwavering support of our wise leadership and with the consensus of the esteemed UNGGIM global community, Saudi Arabia is preparing to host the United Nations Global Geospatial Ecosystem Center of Excellence in Riyadh, the third of its kind, by the way. And now please join me in watching a short video.
Beautiful.
وبذلك يشكل جزءا من الجهود والدعم الدولي للسعي للعمل مع الجميع. نثمن عرض المملكة العربية السعودية لاستضافة مركز تميز في الرياض، نثني على الجهود الرامية إلى إنشاء مركز جديد للتميز. ندعم عرض المملكة العربية السعودية.
نثمن عرض المملكة العربية السعودية. يسرنا كذلك أن نرى الهيئة العامة للمسوحات والمعلومات الجيومكانية في السعودية تعمل على استضافة مركز الامتياز العالمي في الرياض، وهذا سيزيد من قدرات إدارة المعلومات الجيومكانية. ونرحب كذلك بمبادرة المملكة العربية السعودية. نرحب كذلك بجهود الرياض ندعم بكل الرضا.
نقدر عرض المملكة العربية السعودية مهنئة بخصوص إنشاء المركز المقترح في الرياض.
نرحب بالتزام المملكة العربية السعودية تجاه الأمم المتحدة بإنشاء مركز الامتياز العالمي. كما ندعم عرض المملكة العربية السعودية، نثمن عرض المملكة العربية السعودية، إننا ندعم عرض المملكة العربية السعودية لاستضافة مركز للامتياز. نشيد كذلك بعرض المملكة العربية السعودية
رحبوا بعرض المملكة العربية السعودية ورحبت بمقترح المملكة العربية السعودية.
Sharing that video. Thank you, Wujdan.
So this center will mark a new era, moving beyond the traditional concept of spatial data infrastructure to a broader, more dynamic and future-ready geospatial ecosystem, which is an integrated environment where people, policy, and technologies working together. Looking ahead, this center will help build an ecosystem where geospatial data, talent, and technologies working together to inform decision-making across sectors, from national security and smart cities to climate action and public services. So let's say that this center will, and it is, a milestone in the international cooperation stage. Yeah.
Beautiful. We look forward to having it and having it really jumpstart the center. So this takes me back to you, Engineer Ali. Could you tell me more about what are the main initiatives really of GEOSA when it comes to the geospatial ecosystem which Dan was talking about?
Thank you, Fatima. Let me start with a very important milestone. Back in 2014, the conference, a very well-known conference called LEAP, at the edition of 2024, our president announced and launched an initiative, a national initiative that helped us and asked GEOSA to establish the national geospatial ecosystem, taking in consideration all of the international direction. So basically, as Wujdan mentioned, we're not trying to stay behind by adapting to an old technology or old direction. So basically, we acknowledged the role of technology. We acknowledged the role of importance of people, importance of users. So we are consider them a very important role in our infrastructure. We are calling it now the National Geospatial Ecosystem. I would like to share with you a very important milestone that this initiative is fully implemented. Now we are integrated. Now machine can play a very important role in organizing, enabling, and also establishing all of the related use cases, also to satisfy our governance. So we're trying to allow the Internet of Things, AI, to be enabled by our regulatory activities from these initiatives, basically to have a smart data management, to have an operational ecosystem that allows machine to be a part of our daily activities and daily decisions. We are developing and we are enabling ecosystem data architecture by continuously updating, continuously developing to not only host new kinds of data, but also to satisfy and implement new directions. And with that, I would like to close up with the importance of this ecosystem. Give it a try. Reach out to GEOSA because GEOSA is very advancing in these kind of activities, not only to represent our departments or GEOSA, but also to the whole geospatial sector. So we are talking about a community.
Beautiful.
The geospatial community is one. Now it's advancing, and you all welcome, either from the private sector, academia, or government organization. You are on board, and you are very welcome.
That's wonderful, and I'm glad you talked about communities, Engineer Ali, because that takes me to our success story at GEOSA. I mean, it must take partners to kind of draw the success story that we lived. Could you tell us more about that, Engineer Hussam?
Yes, as you may hear before, we spoke about infrastructure, and then I take you to dive in the sea with our survey. Now, all this information and survey, how we make this information available and useful for all of us through geospatial portal. Let me introduce to you our geospatial portal, and it's a single platform where all your data comes together and shared with our partners. I will go to the numbers, and we do have collaboration about more than 90 government entities, and we do also have more than 22 private sector, and my colleagues, they told me this number has been increased.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
And also the more than like 22 academy and 50 plus private sector. We do have inquiries, more than 500 or 200 inquiries, and we provide about 500 services. All of this through our portal. This is very important by enabling private sector. Enabling private sector, we are empowering the innovation. We are just talking about self-driving and air taxi, also the smart cities and etc. application that we can have this platform helping our application and service and solutions. For example, I will take the self-driving, how we are enabling our partner and also the private sector to have this by having the regulator and also to providing the HD maps, which built on also the data that already we have by mobile mapping and panoramic imaging. Also the air taxi require a 3D data to have the corridor that the airplanes can go through or the unmanned vehicles can go through. Also to have also the obstacles, the height obstacles, all of this data can be provided by the GeoPortal. In the end, I would like to talk about the smart cities and the trend, the digital twin, how we can help. And as you see in the last video, that we are protecting our world. We are transferring the real world to have it digitized and to have it in the portal and to do more simulations, more solutions, more geo solutions on it. We will have more protective data and innovative idea.
Of course, with all that, Engineer Hussam, يعني having that, it will reduce cost, it will reduce time, it will reduce effort, and it will reduce also having other sectors doing the same thing at the same time, right?
Yeah, I will name it, it's a gateway for the raw data to be transferred in the real world and digitized world, and to have all our stakeholder and management. We do have foundation team, as Engineer Ali mentioned before. We do have gathering all of this information from different sectors, and we are empowering government, businesses, and also innovators to have better future.
Beautiful. I love that. That's really well said. This takes me to you, Dr. Sahar. What are some great investment opportunities ahead of us in the sector that you think might be interesting?
Yeah, sure. After we talk about all the achievements and the promising market, there's many opportunities actually, and future economic activities initiatives is one of them that will introduce some geospatial activities to the investment opportunities in the market, and this will be a very good chance to all local and international companies, enabling the private sectors, make a strategic partnership between government and private sectors. Licensing system, as I said, which is regulate and putting the criteria for operate on the geospatial sectors, make the sector is very transparent for investor and for private sectors. One more thing, and it is very interesting to close up this question with GeoSandbox, which is platform to testing the solutions and turn it scaling up as project, future project.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that example. Wujdan, this takes me to you. And through the past years, as you know, GeoSA has not only moved up the ladder, but rather jumped up the ladder really in ranking. Could you tell us more about that?
It is, yeah. So finally, numbers.
Yes.
It is with a pleasure I say that the kingdom's achievements are not abstract. They are measurable. So in only 2 years, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has moved from 32nd to 9th place globally, now ranking 6th among the G20 nations and 1st in both Arab and Middle East region. And that was in the Geospatial Knowledge Infrastructure Readiness Index, an index that compares countries' readiness in different areas such as infrastructure, policy, and capacity building. And now allow me to share a personal reflection.
Sure.
Yeah. So earlier this year in Madrid, I was sitting quietly, preparing myself for the upcoming panel on the legal perspective on GeoAI, when suddenly one of my colleagues placed a dark wooden rounded piece in my hand, engraved with the words, "The National Geospatial Agency of the Year."
And that's the one we see there.
Thank you. An award that had been received by Dr. Mohammed Al-Sayel, the CEO of the General Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information. In that moment, and believe me, Fatma, it felt like much more than an award. I could see years of vision, partnerships, the tireless dedication of so many people working together. So it wasn't only a recognition of what we achieved, it is actually a reminder to keep building a future where geospatial knowledge is not only a national strength, but also a global contribution.
Beautifully, beautifully said, Wujdan. Thank you for that. And I see we still have a few minutes on the clock. So how about one last message that you guys could send for us and you would like to tell the audience here? Maybe Engineer Hussam, you could start?
Yeah, no numbers now.
Okay.
I'm preparing like a sentence that I would like to have and say it like in short. And digital twin is not just about technology. It's about creating smarter, safer, and greener world for our future generation. This is something I would like to share with you in this moment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Engineer Ali, please.
Actually, it's very hard to just close up this discussion with the general point. But let me simplify things for you. For all of our attendees, either in person or online, geospatial is an enabling sector. So we are expected to enable other sectors. We are trying so hard to do that. All of the recognition from international organizations, from national agencies, our government recognized the importance of geospatial, hence they invested in such directions. So I would like to thank you all to support GeoSA in achieving such milestones. And I would like to remind ourselves that we are now becoming the center of attraction, not only regionally, but also globally. So as my previous message, jump on with us and join us with the direction of development of this geospatial sector, because it is very promising.
Beautiful. It is indeed, isn't it, Dr. Sahar?
Thank you so much, Fatima. And as a last word, maybe I will say all this huge work and regulation, licensing, strong infrastructure, ecosystem, all in the end will make a strong and trust environment for investment and supporting the sectors to grow more in the future. And as we said, it is a promising, so still there is huge opportunities in the future.
Beautiful. Wijda.
So I would quote you to say that it takes leadership, partnerships to grow.
Beautiful. It really does. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues. I would like to go ahead and view the next slide and reiterate what Mohandas Ali was saying, that please go ahead and reach out to GIOSA. Please do reach out and talk to us. Ask us questions. We want to enable you. We want to support you. We want to give you whatever you need when it comes to the geospatial sector. Here are our website, email address, phone number, and also our social media accounts as well. So please go ahead and follow us on that. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear guests. Thank you. Thank you.